Hello, and thank you for watching today's Corn Belt Regional Forecast. I'm Andrew Pritchard, meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. So you look at the next 10 days, our temperature anomaly forecast, we are really headed toward a summer-like pattern for much of the eastern half of the Corn Belt and a very early winter chill coming into the northwestern portions of the Corn Belt across the Dakotas. Look at the 6 to 10 day temperature forecast here. So we're talking about September 30th on into the first couple of days of October. Headed for a pattern right here where the jet stream does something like this: a big trough in the west and then a ridge across the east. Across especially the eastern Corn Belt, take a look at the color bar over here. We're talking about temperatures 10 to 15 degrees or more above average. And then you do the same thing for parts of the Dakotas, Montana, the southern Canadian prairie, and we're breaking the color bar at 20 degrees cooler than average. Now a jet stream alignment like this along the dividing line here between that cooler air mass and the warm summer-like air mass across the east, this battleground, that sets the stage for some heavy precipitation along a corridor from the Central Plains into the Great Lakes. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. The last 24 hours of precipitation, pretty quiet across the Corn Belt. We did see a front moving through parts of the eastern Corn Belt into the mid-south, bringing some light and scattered showers and storms. We'll be watching another front developing across the west to bring some more precipitation as we head through the next 24 to 48 hours. As we take a look at the satellite picture here, then early on Tuesday morning, high pressure across the eastern Corn Belt, a very beautiful morning as you wake up over here across parts of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, even into Kentucky and Tennessee. Temperatures in the 50s and the 60s with a crisp blue sky once that sun begins to come up. Off to the west, this is where we're watching our next approaching system that's going to be bringing some showers and storms to parts of the Corn Belt and maybe even some severe weather to this corridor as we head through the afternoon and evening. We'll take a look at that here in just a moment. First, let's look at the frontal picture here and the surface map. Here's that area of high pressure across the eastern Corn Belt and the developing storm system across the northern plains into the Great Lakes that could bring some severe weather to parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and surrounding areas as we head through the evening and overnight. As we jump ahead, looking to Wednesday morning, that frontal boundary starts to push into the eastern Corn Belt, bringing a chance for some isolated showers and storms to the eastern Corn Belt here, talking about parts of Missouri, Illinois, and then on into Indiana and Ohio later in the day on Wednesday. Behind that, high pressure once again, bringing a reinforcing shot of some cooler air. Talking a lot about reinforcing shots of cooler air as we head all the way through the weekend. It's as we get beyond the weekend that we really start to turn the furnace on across the eastern half of the Corn Belt. Now your severe weather outlook for the next 2 days here is today, Wednesday, and then Thursday. We're watching an area of high potential here, an enhanced risk across parts of Iowa into southern Minnesota and parts of Wisconsin. A slight risk surrounding that yellow area from Kansas to Wisconsin. As we look at Wednesday, a marginal risk for an isolated strong storm or two across parts of Kansas and Missouri. And then as we head into Thursday, not really talking about any focused areas of severe storms. Now getting more specific on today's threat, this is later this afternoon and evening, there is a 10% hatched area for tornadoes, and that's a fairly significant risk, especially this time of year. And again, that's parts of central and northern Iowa into southeastern Missouri or Minnesota, and then perhaps parts of western Kansas. And then additionally, the hail probability is pretty high there as well, 20 or 30% hatched area. That means the potential for not only a high risk for hailstones, but the hatched area means significant hailstones that are larger than 2 inches in diameter. The same thing over here, that hatched area within the yellow gives the 10% or greater probability of strong tornadoes, EF2 to EF5. And not talking about really thinking that we're going to see violent tornadoes today, but again, this is just a fairly significant severe weather risk as we talk about late September. So heads up across parts of Iowa, Missouri, I keep wanting to say Missouri, heads up across Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin as you head through Tuesday evening, this evening into the early overnight hours for that chance for some strong thunderstorms and the potential for some very large hail and maybe a few tornadoes. We'll take a look at that here with the high resolution rapid refresh. We'll go ahead and take a look at the next 18 hours here. Again, focusing in on the frontal boundary in this area for that chance for some severe storms as we head through the afternoon and evening tonight. Going through about midday today, we are quiet across the Corn Belt. It's as we head to the mid-afternoon, late evening. This is about 4 p.m. I would expect these storms to begin to pop up along the front here across southern Minnesota into parts of Iowa. We see that happening here, and then eventually into Wisconsin as we head into the early overnight. So that greatest severe weather risk, again, going to be across Iowa into southeastern Minnesota into Wisconsin, late afternoon, evening, into the early overnight. Once we get beyond about midnight, that severe weather risk really begins to decrease. Some form of these leftover showers and storms will continue off to the east across parts of Illinois and then eventually the Great Lakes and Michigan. So in Illinois, perhaps a shower or storm moving in late tonight after midnight or tomorrow morning. This front continues off to the southeast, then getting out of the Illinois area by the time we get to midday Wednesday afternoon. The high-resolution NAM model, this will take us out a bit further, showing us a very similar picture, but its own personal take on things. We'll head through the afternoon on Tuesday, again watching for these severe storms to erupt along this frontal boundary across Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Perhaps a few storms popping up across parts of Kansas as well. Are going to be more isolated in coverage across that area and a lower severe weather risk in that area. Heading into the overnight hours, we're at midnight now, watching these storms continue off across parts of Wisconsin, seeing isolated to scattered showers and storms popping up across central Illinois late tonight into tomorrow morning. This front moves off to the west as we head into Wednesday afternoon, losing a lot of its oomph here. So some scattered showers and storms possible anywhere from southern Missouri along the Ohio River into parts of eastern Ohio as we head into Wednesday evening, but they're going to be much more lighter in nature, not talking about the severe weather risk that we're seeing across the upper Midwest today. By the time we get to Thursday, this front kind of stalls across the region. It will lift northward as a warm front as we head into Friday and Saturday, bringing a chance of showers and storms back to the Corn Belt, again, Friday and Saturday. We'll take a look at the total accumulated precipitation forecast from the high-resolution NAM model. Again, where that biggest risk for more widespread severe storms is across Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. That's where we see the highest precipitation stacking up here over the next day or two, although we could have some pockets of heavy rainfall here depending on where these thunderstorms pop up across parts of southern Kansas as well. So we talk about the eastern Corn Belt here, Illinois through Ohio, when that front pushes through here during the late part of Tuesday night into Wednesday, really looking at more isolated, light hit or miss shower, maybe a few thunderstorm activity. So not talking about significant precipitation in the eastern Corn Belt from this frontal passage on Wednesday. Now, as we get beyond this is a thunderstorm index that I developed here over at Nutrien Ag Solutions, and it kind of highlights environments that are favorable for thunderstorms. And as I just kind of play this, getting us past the weekend, focusing in on this area, you start to see repeated rounds of these red shades showing up right there, and that is as we head into the early to middle part of next week. Starting to see a front kind of set up right in the same area that we're watching today, from the central plains back into the upper Midwest, where we might start to see repeated rounds of showers and storms and the potential for some significant rainfall in this region. So let's take a look. We'll look at the GFS model. This will take us out a bit further. Quickly going through the next couple of days here, it has the thunderstorm activity popping up in the upper Midwest into the central plains this afternoon, evening, and tonight. Moving on into the eastern Corn Belt, but kind of washing out for the day on Wednesday. Quiet on Thursday, and then it's on Friday. We start to see that front lifting back northward across parts of Iowa and Illinois. We may begin to see some showers and storms pop up across that area. Continuing into the day on Saturday, so that's a Friday and Saturday threat there in the central and eastern Corn Belt. As we head into the late part of the weekend, though, now getting into Sunday, we're starting to see this area of low pressure begin to rapidly develop and intensify across the central plains, across parts of Nebraska. Here we're looking at 1 p.m. on Saturday. Strong southerly flow. Look how tightly packed these isobars are getting surrounding this area of low pressure. Very strong southerly flow in advance. That's what's going to bring the summer-like warmth into the region. Look on the back side here. So much return flow out of the north. We're getting some snow on the backside of this thing, possibly across the Canadian prairie. This is an incredibly strong early autumn storm system here, again, bringing in some strong summer-like warmth across the eastern half of the Corn Belt, cool temperatures in the north, and then right in the middle, that dividing line, the battleground where we could see repeated rounds of showers and storms, perhaps heavy at times from the central plains into the upper Midwest. Looking at that from the national blended model, I'm going to play every 6 hours accumulated precipitation. You'll know when we get to early next week because you're going to see it set up right there. From the Central Plains to the Eastern Corn Belt, repeated rounds of heavy rain and thunderstorms possible early next week. Here's the accumulated precipitation forecast. There you see it, just hammering the same areas over and over as we get into the early to middle part of next week. Now, I know you're noticing the color bar. You're looking over here and saying, oh my goodness, widespread areas of 6 to 10 inches. Well, Eric and I have been watching this model, and what we've kind of learned is this model does a good job at the placement of the heaviest corridor of precipitation, and it also does a good job at picking out the maximum total there. So what I would say if you're looking at this map is we're watching an area, especially right here, from parts of northeastern Kansas, eastern Nebraska, through Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, perhaps northern Illinois, where we've got the potential for pockets of 6 to 10 inches of precipitation as you head through the next 10 days. So we'll get better at specifics here. You know, we're talking about early to mid next week. It's only Tuesday of this week, so we're talking 7 days in the future. This could shift north or south. The totals could change. We'll narrow in on this. Really, we just want to kind of let you know where we're headed next week. This summer-like pattern across the east, cooler off to the northwest, with the battleground in the middle there, with the potential for repeated rounds of heavy rain and thunderstorms from the Central Plains to the upper Midwest next week. Not to dismiss the severe weather threat that we already have today across that same region, Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Here's a look at the jet stream, how we're doing all of this. Of course, we begin to head into early next week, watching this pattern set up, and this is one we know well. That trough in the west, the ridge in the east, that brings the warmth underneath that ridge, the cooler temperatures in the trough and the battleground right along that dividing line for heavy rain and thunderstorms. Your high temperatures for the next 5 days here. A very pleasant early autumn day here today. High temperatures anywhere from near 70 degrees in the Dakotas to near 90 across parts of southern Kansas. Cooler air starts filtering into the region here on the backside of that front on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we get another reinforcing shot of some cooler air across parts of the Corn Belt as we head into Saturday. But then beyond that, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, heading on into the middle part of next week, really turning on the heat across this portion of the Corn Belt. As always, Eric Snodgrass will have our long-range forecast, talking about our U.S. weather analysis tomorrow morning, the ag forecast video looking at the next 1 to 2 weeks on Thursday morning, and I'll be back to talk about the Corn Belt on Friday morning. Have a great day.